Google's Pixel line of phones have reached the 6th generation, and it's safe to say there's been a few missteps along the way. With a mix of flagships and mid-range releases over the last few years, Google has never seemed like they could find the right combination of specs and price to really become a big player in the market. But something feels different this year. With a new design, new cameras, and Google's first in-house processor, this year's lineup has a chance to be something special. The Pixel lineup is simple this year, offering just two models, the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro. Starting at just $599, the Pixel 6 matches a lot of what the 6 Pro offers, while coming in $300 cheaper. Both start at 128GB of storage, with the 6 getting 8GB of RAM versus 12GB on the Pro. I bought the stormy black color variant and I really like the two-tone finish. There's also a green option called Sorta Seafoam and a pink and red version called Kinda Coral. So the first thing that stands out is that new design. It really wouldn't feel like a Pixel phone without some weird, different design, and this phone is definitely that. You get glass on the front and back with a 6.4-inch 1080p AMOLED screen. It's got a 90Hz refresh rate, an aluminum frame on the sides, and new camera bar across the back. It's a pretty bold approach, and you may love or hate the look, but I will say it's kind of grown on me over the last week. You don't really think about it when you're using the phone because you're staring at the screen, but your finger kind of just rests against it when you're holding the phone. If it really bothers you, you can always just throw a case on it and it kind of cancels it out. So first off, this is a big phone. At 6.4 inches, one-handed usage is kind of difficult. But it's a really nice screen with vivid colors and it's great for media consumption or playing games. The 90Hz refresh rate isn't anything new, but you can still definitely call it an upgrade over your standard 60Hz panel in responsiveness and scrolling. I'm also really happy the front glass is flat and not rounded like the 6 Pro on the edges, but the maximum screen brightness doesn't get super bright. The fingerprint reader is under the screen and it's not great. It's a little slow and sometimes takes a few tries to get it to read. I would have definitely preferred a sensor built into the power button or on the back, but it's not the end of the world. Face unlock is not offered here, so this is your only way of quickly unlocking the phone outside of a pin or a pattern unlock. There's a ton to like here, including nice clicky buttons, really solid haptics, stereo speakers, wireless charging, IP68 dust and water resistance, reverse wireless charging, and a whole lot more. Google's first in-house processor, called the Tensor chip, is powering the device behind the scenes. This is actually the same chip that's running the 6 Pro, so you're not missing out with this version. This is Google stepping away from Snapdragon and developing their own chip in partnership with Samsung to really try and unify what they want to specialize in, things like their AI features and photography processing, and it holds up. In day-to-day use, the phone is very responsive and feels really quick. For a quick comparison, benchmarks place it just a little under the power of the Snapdragon 888, but I feel like there's a lot more to this chip than just raw benchmarks. All of Google's special add-ons that I love from previous Pixel phones are back and more impressive than ever. Things like call screening for spam calls, an automatic hold feature that will alert you when someone comes on the line, real-time language translation, now playing which detects what song is playing and tells you the song name and artist, live captioning for any video you watch, car crash detection, the list goes on. And that's not even mentioning the new camera processing, which we'll touch on in a bit. Now, it's not the fastest phone you can buy, but what it does really well. Sure, you may drop a few frames on games at their highest settings, and a small bit of lag can pop up from time to time, but for Google's first step into their own processing, it's really solid. So let's talk about the new cameras. The front hole punch selfie camera is an 8-megapixel wide camera that can record video in 1080p at 30 frames per second. It's decent, but nothing we haven't seen before. Housed in the back of that new camera bar are new 50-megapixel wide and 12-megapixel ultra-wide cameras. Now you lose the telephoto lens from the 6 Pro, but these new cameras should have you covered for most of what you want to do, which is not surprising. Google's been known for the camera performance on older Pixel phones, and these are no exception, though they're not perfect. In good light, you get really clear pictures with moderate saturation that can compete with top-of-the-line flagships from other brands. The new 50-megapixel sensor lets in a lot of light and provides crisp images, but you don't actually get 50-megapixel photos. Google bends these images down to 12 megapixels for increased clarity and resolution. I'd say the only drawback I've noticed is it tends to over-sharpen images to the point that the pictures don't look super true to life. The ultra-wide is good, though not quite as wide as you can find on some phones. It's a nice complement to the 50-megapixel wide lens. Tying back to that new Tensor processor, some really cool features are included with the cameras this time. Night sight is still here and it's still impressive. Astrophotography is also still here with slightly better processing this time around. Magic Eraser is a new feature that gives you Photoshop-like abilities to remove unwanted objects after you've taken a picture. Say you've got a great picture but you don't want some strangers in the background, this new tool will analyze what it thinks you may want to remove, and with a click, they're gone. You can also highlight items yourself and the phone will do its best to try and fill in what it thinks it should look like behind them. It's not perfect and sometimes you get bad results, but this thing is just so much fun. I found myself just taking random pictures and erasing things just to see if the phone could pull it off. For a first generation feature, this is really cool. Lastly, video recording here is available at up to 4K 60 frames per second, or slow-mo at 1080p 240 frames per second. Videos are sharp with good stabilizations, and I can definitely see an improvement over the Pixel 5's video. You'll still occasionally get some graininess in low-light recording, and the HDR tends to over-highlight some scenes, but it's pretty solid. It doesn't match the iPhone's video, but Google has been a little behind there for years, but overall it's still really good video. So let's talk about the battery for a minute. The battery life for me has been good, but it's also been a little all over the place. The Pixel 6 comes with a 4600 mAh battery, which is good size and should provide solid screen on time, but doesn't quite last as long as I'd hope. I was mostly getting 4.5 to 5.5 hours of screen on time in my daily use. You would think that Google would really be able to squeeze out better efficiency with this new custom chip, but it's not quite there yet. And when I said it's all over the place, it really felt random. One day I'd get 4.5 hours, and the next day I'd get 6.5 hours, even though my usage didn't really change. This could be improved with the software update as Google gets farther along with its Tensor chip, but there's no way to know for sure. On a positive note, this year you do get faster charging speeds at 30 watts wired and up to 20 watts wirelessly. So this phone has been mostly excellent, but there were a few issues I ran across. I mentioned it before, but the fingerprint sensor feels like a letdown. It's just a little too slow, and Google could remedy this by adding a face unlock feature, but I don't know that they will. The second thing I came across was the phone felt a little hot at times when I was using it. Not a big deal and never too hot to handle, but it would definitely warm up along the left side after prolonged use. The last thing I was disappointed in was the new Material You theme. Google has been hyping this up for Android 12, and it brings a nice looking larger fonts, big bubbles, and color matching app theming, but there's really not a lot here. As nice as stock Android is, I really feel like Google needs to add more features to the Pixel launcher. The big color matching portion of Material You only works with a handful of apps, and those are mostly Google's own default apps, so you're left with a mismatching app drawer. They're pushing a few new widget designs with Android 12, but even those are kind of limited. One big thing they could do would just be to allow custom icons. You can do this with any custom launcher, and OnePlus has been doing it forever, but not with the Pixel launcher. This isn't a huge deal, as with any Android you can just install a custom launcher, but it would be pretty cool if Pixel launcher had its own exclusive features instead of just being pure Android. But with all that being said, when you combine what's on offer here with a starting price of $599, this is the best Pixel phone yet for your money. It's got premium features and a premium build for $100 less than the Pixel 5 launched for last year. This year's Pixel just feels different. And while the 6 Pro is what's really going to be competing with the Apples and Samsungs of the world, the regular Pixel 6 is my favorite Pixel phone to date, with Google finally finding that perfect sweet spot of specs versus price. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Thanks for stopping by. And if you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing. I'll have a Pixel 6 Pro review up sometime soon if they would ever ship it. Until next time.